All right, here we go. We have funk royalty in the building. Morris Day, lead singer of Morris Day and the Time, with classic hits like Jungle Love and Jerk Out.
The Bird.
The Bird.
Gigolos get lonely too, yes.
That's right. And last but not least, musical collaborator with the one and only Prince. Rest in peace. Well, you have a new book out, which I got to read.
Awesome.
And the name of the book is?
On Time.
That's right.
A Princely Life in Funk.
Right. And I think what I like about the book is that you kind of have conversations with Prince throughout the book in his own voice, which is kind of dope.
Yeah, I thought that concept was the last thing that I wanted to do was do a book and just straight tell the story. You know, I wanted it to be different, have a little different, edge, angle, whatever you like to it. And I think we came up with it.
Very cool. Well, there's going to be a link under all these videos.
Awesome.
You can actually go and purchase the book.
Nice, nice.
So definitely check it out. Well, this is your first time here, so I want to get into your whole story.
Yeah.
So you grew up you were born in Springfield, Illinois.
That's right.
Where did you actually grow up?
Grew up in Minneapolis. My mom got us up out of Springfield when I was about 8 years old. Went up to Minneapolis, as the story goes, stopped to visit a sick aunt. And we were supposed to be on our way to California. Ended up staying in Minneapolis for the next 20 years.
And your mom, I guess, got married at 16?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was your dad around?
No, he wasn't around. Yeah, he was in the service and over in Germany, which I probably have some siblings over there that I don't know about. But anyway, so he was doing his thing and, they just, parted ways.
He missed out.
Yeah.
He definitely missed out. Okay, so here you are growing up in Minneapolis. And I guess Prince lived at his mom's house down the street from you?
I didn't know that. Yeah, I grew up, we first moved to South Side Minneapolis. Then we moved over North Side to, my aunt and uncle had I think you call them bungalows, where the same house, but they split into two side by side. We lived on one side, and I didn't even really, Prince had a nice house, this nice dog, one of them big poodles and shit, and, he lived right down, and I used to see him in Tyka, out playing. And I met him really years later, but for that time, I lived right around the corner from him.
Okay, and you guys met in high school?
Pretty much, yeah.
And you were already a drummer?
Yeah.
And I guess you joined a band that he was already in?
He had a band called Grand Central, him and Andre Simone. And Andre and I got kind of tight because I went to see these guys at, it's all in the book, by the way, but I'm going to give you little tidbits. And I went to see them at a lunchroom after school Friday night concert or dance, I guess it was. And I was just mesmerized by these guys, man. They were like 14, 15 years old. Prince was playing like Carlos Santana solos and Hendrix and just, flawlessly, not trying to chop his way through. And the band was super tight. And I was just like in awe. And got to know Andre from that. We started hanging out, smoke a little weed together. One day we skipped school, went over to my house, smoked some weed, and I had my drums upstairs, So I had this big speaker behind my drums. And, I blast some Tower Power. I started, knocking out some What Is Hip and some Soul Vaccination, and just because I was really into Dave Garibaldi and Tower Power at the time. Among others, but I was just something about the way Garibaldi played that intrigued me. And I patterned myself in a funkier way behind Dave. And so anyway, I got done hitting these songs, man. I turned my turntable off and Andre's sitting there with his jaw dropped. He's just staring, man. I was like, what's up, man? He's like, dude, I didn't know you could play like that. And he's like, man, it just so happens that our drummer, we're having problems with him, who was Charles Smith. We called him Chaz, and that was Prince's cousin. So he said, you should bring your drums by and try us out, man. Audition. And so I did. A couple of days later, my drums never left.
Well, I guess when you first met the band, everyone was really friendly except for Prince.
Yeah.
He was kind of like standoffish.
Yeah, very much. Prince was always in the cut. And true to form, he's never changed, but he was just, sort of, I guess, checking me out, and he was real cautious. We only talked music, arrangements, this and that, songs and stuff like that. And, aside from that, he was in the cut, just kind of looking. And, finally, maybe a month went by, we started talk a little bit, sort of broke the ice. And, eventually, through it all, we became really good buddies.
Well, I guess back then in high school, he had an afro,
Yeah.
a turtleneck, bell bottoms, and pink girl gloves with the fingers cut off.
Yeah. There wasn't even, fingers. There was big mittens, the big girl mittens.
And he always had this kind of metrosexual vibe to him, even back in high school.
Absolutely. Even before I knew what this metrosexual, I come to know that word, but before I knew what that shit was, yeah, he was on that tip.
Right. And I guess he took a lot of his style from like hairdressers and like feminine, like ways and so forth, but he really knew how to kind of also keep it macho at the same time.
He got a kick out of the gay hairstylists and stuff, and the way they talked, the stuff they laughed at, and he incorporated in some of that, and the way the grace and all of that, and he just got a kick out of that stuff.
Okay, but you said that he was always straight as a gate.
As far as I know, as far as I know, he was into the girls.
Right, because he really pushed it at one point. I remember, I think it really came to the extremes when he had like the pants with like the butt cheeks hanging out.
The dirty, that and the Dirty Mind album, the leg warmers and the hot pants and all of that. That was that, even all of the guys in the band and me and everybody was just kind of sitting back. Now, where's this going and where's it coming from?
Right, I'm looking at the Dirty Mind cover right now. Yeah, I mean that's kind of different, but not like the open butt cheek pants.
Yeah, that was a step further. It was all out there, out of my lane for me. So
Right, that was one of the things that no one really copied. It was like when he wore those pants, he pretty much was the one of that.
The thing about Prince, and that's a testament to his genius, that he's such an incredible musician, entertainer, that guys who normally wouldn't even buy somebody's record who dressed like that, he got a hall pass because he was such an incredible entertainer.
Right. You said in the book that he was a different breed. Like, you were a serious drummer, but he didn't just play music. He was the music.
No, absolutely. Lived it 24/7. I always turn the lights out, at some point. And, the only time Prince would is just to maybe fill in time when he couldn't be doing music. But, I've never been a workaholic. So, that's kind of where we clashed a little bit, because I couldn't, when I moved out to the suburbs, I couldn't even go to the grocery store without running into this dude. And I'd be like trying to take the evening off, go out to a club, do a little something. And he'd be like, come by my house tonight. We're recording. All the time. This dude never stopped, man.
So at one point he left Grand Central and went solo.
Yeah.
Was that like a big blow to the group?
Well, when he left the group, it was a blow, because, that trying to find somebody to fill that spot never happened. We found guitar players and we carried on, but it just wasn't the same.
Yeah, tried to replace Prince.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Imagine that.
Right.
That wanted ad, looking for a Prince replacement.
Exactly.
So he went solo.
Yeah.
And he got signed.
Yeah.
And then one day you're hanging out in Minneapolis and you heard Soft and Wet on the radio.
Actually, I was hanging out in Maryland. I lived in Gaithersburg, Maryland. My mom moved us there, and I was working at a car rental counter at, I believe it was called Montgomery Ward's, and they had a little car rental counter in there, and I was working there. Now I'm standing up one day, and Soft and Wet comes on the radio. And that was pretty incredible for me, because that was almost like me hearing my own music, because, we grew up together. So, I'm standing there and I'm telling random people, oh, that's my buddy on the radio right now. And they're looking at me like, yeah, whatever. But yeah, that's how that went.
Okay. So he moved. Well, you moved away.
Yeah,
He formed his own band, the Revolution,
that's right.
and the Revolution already had a drummer. But at one point, you came back and you hooked up with him again.
Yeah.
But like I said, the Revolution already had a drummer.
And I was coming back to town to get that job too. That was my slot. So, I'm thinking, I can play better than Bobby Z. So this should be a no-brainer. So, Prince was blunt. He's always, he never, he always gave it to you straight. He's like, no, I already have a drummer. Like, okay. He said, but, you can come hang out and videotape the shows, which was a little bit of a slap in the face. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it.
Right. You became his cameraman, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And he went on tour with Rick James.
Yeah.
He opened up for Rick James, actually. And Rick James was on fire at this point.
Yeah.
This was when Super Freak was out?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, right around there.
Oh, yeah. So was that the first tour you went on?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it was I think it might have been after that, because it was actually the Dirty Mind tour. And I don't think he was opening for Rick at that time. But I could be wrong. It's a long time ago.
All right. But at one point, he did go on tour with Rick James.
Yeah.
And I remember reading Rick's biography, and Rick just hated Prince.
I think he hated him. I think it was a pressure thing. I think it was more threatened by than hate. If I had to, because Prince coming on strong, man. He's gaining momentum. Probably kicking Rick's ass some nights. So I think he was probably more threatened, by Prince than anything.
Okay, and what exactly was happening on the tour between Prince and Rick James?
Man, I don't really know what was going on, with them, because my thing was the cameras. I wasn't doing much hanging out back then. I was just camera, room, and so, I hadn't turned into MD yet.
Okay. And Prince, even back then, was wearing the metrosexual type stuff. He was wearing like the bikini underwear and the trench coat. Yeah. And how were the crowds dealing with him back then, opening up for Rick James?
He was holding his own, and like I said, because, once they saw his musicianship and his ability to entertain, and, he got that hall pass. The women, they don't really care about that kind of thing anyway, but guys especially, gave him that hall pass because he's such a talented dude.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then at the end of that tour, he really didn't need Rick James anymore. He was on fire on his own.
Exactly.
Well, and then he started opening up for the Rolling Stones. Were you on that tour?
I was at one show, and it was like a Woodstock, Coachella kind of thing out in the middle of nowhere. And I could kind of see it coming on, man, because we get out here and you see all of these dudes, man, hardcore biker looking dudes, beards and motorcycles and tattoos, and and then here comes Prince. I'm out at the soundboard, and I'm seeing all this develop, man, and here he comes out, trench coat back, legs out and stuff, man, and these dudes, they wasn't having it, man. Next thing I know, I start seeing beer bottles flying up on stage, and I was like, oh shit, it's time to go. So I had to beeline, get backstage and catch him coming off. We were straight into the car to the airport and back to Minneapolis right away.
Well, right. I interviewed Stokely Williams of Mint Condition, who worked with Prince later on, and he told me about a conversation him and Prince had about that, and he said that show was so bad. I mean, because guys were literally throwing beer bottles at him, and really was like, calling him gay and everything else like that.
The whole tone just.
Oh yeah, that he actually wanted to quit at that point completely, and Mick Jagger had to talk him like off the ledge.
Talked about when he's like, Stokely, when I first went on my first tour, like that Rolling Stones thing, not first tour, but or maybe it was, and he was telling me I got booed. I was just like, man, I didn't want to come back. And he said Mick Jagger's the one that actually called him back because he quit. You know, he didn't want to go back when he got booed. It's like, I said, what'd you do? He said, I just walked off stage. What could I do? And he said, Mick is the one that actually called him back. You can't quit, man. Come back. And, you know, so I guess he finished the tour.
You see, that could be. See, I didn't catch that because the part that I caught was once I made it back, he was on his way out, car, airport. I know he was humiliated, and you know, but he wasn't talking like quitting.
Okay.
I think that's a bit extreme for Prince. You know, that was part of his being. You know.
I mean, how did he feel about that whole experience? 'Cause that sounds pretty brutal.
No, it was crazy. He was humiliated, but you know what? I think it motivated him. You know, so because you know we got right back. He was right back in the studio. You know, didn't miss a beat, and you know I just think that somehow fueled his tank. You know, in a positive way.
Well, Prince had a deal with Warner Brothers, and in that deal, it allowed him to bring other groups and artists under his deal, and one of those groups was The Time.
That's right.
So when Prince first approached you and said, "Hey, I want to produce you guys," and so forth, how did you feel?
Well, first of all, there was no time. It was just me, and kind of around that time that we got back from the whole Rolling Stones ordeal, you know, he said, if you want to use the studio, because I would stay at his house when he, you know, go on some shows or go do stuff in LA, I'd stay at his house. And he's like, you want to get in the studio and cut some stuff, you know, have at it. And I was like, great. So the first song I really cut ended up being Party Up. So he heard the song and he liked it. So he was like, you know, I want your song. He said, I'll give you money, you know, 10, 15, 20 grand, whatever he said. And he said, or I'll help you get a deal, put a band together. I said, that's what I'm talking about. So that's what we did. We started cutting. We basically cut the whole album, he and I, and, you know, a few background singers and fill in stuff like that. But we cut the album right there at his studio. A few songs in, we had finished up Get It Up. He took that out to LA, to Warner Brothers. Mo Austin and the crew heard it, and they signed us sight unseen. So then we went back and we had like 2 weeks to finish the album completely, and we finished it. So basically, we put the band together after the album was done.
Okay, and the group kind of, I mean, Morris Day and The Time came out of a group called Flight Time.
Most of the members were in Flight Time, and that was Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam's group. Super talented guys. You know, Prince didn't really want them. He wanted some other musicians that I had been working with. He used to come out to some of our shows, and I was in a band called Enterprise Band of Pleasure. And there's a guy on bass, Jeffrey McGraven. He really wanted Jeffrey in, and he was kind of going in a different direction. And I told him that I wanted Jimmy and Terry because I had heard stuff that they had cut on, what's her name? You know, Funky Town. You know what I'm talking about?
The lead singer of Funky Town?
Yeah, the lead singer. Her name. But I had heard some productions.
Cynthia Johnson.
Cynthia Johnson. I had heard some productions they had done with Cynthia, stuff that they had written and produced on her, and I was like, these guys are really good, you know. And so I really wanted them in the band. Plus, they were super solid players and entertainers. So we ended up using most of them because Monty was in their group. Jelly Bean wasn't going to be in the band because I was supposed to be the drummer. And that's what I wanted to do. I never wanted to be a lead singer, but I'm glad that it happened that way because drummers phased out after that. You know, back in the day, you used to be able to go from studio to studio, you know, and, you know, make $1,000 a session, and you could just do that all week long. But after drum machines started getting popular,
right,
which they were starting to get popular then, you couldn't do that. So, you know, I wanted to be the drummer. And we had different people. Alexander O'Neill was going to be the lead singer at one point. And he wanted more money, and we didn't have it. So we passed on him. We checked out a few girls to maybe be the lead. And, you know, after we exhausted all of our options, Prince was like, you do it. I was like, I don't know how to lead up a band, man. He's like, well, just be cool, you know. Put your hand in your pocket. So if you watch the Cool video, you'll notice my right hand never comes out of my pocket the whole video. So I was following, his advice through that, and then from there, just kind of mushroomed, and I learned how to be a lead guy. But yeah, that wasn't my plan. And by me being a lead singer, I was happy because then Jelly Bean was kind of sidelined. We were able to pull him into the band, and so it felt complete.
Well, here you are in a band with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who went on to become the biggest producers ever. They did all the Janet Jackson stuff. I mean, New Edition.
All of everybody.
They did everybody at some point.
Yeah.
But with Prince being Prince, he played every instrument on that first album.
Yeah.
And every instrument. And even your vocals, he laid them out and you had to do them note by note.
Pretty much.
How does a Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis really just sit back and say, okay, I guess we're not going to contribute at all to this?
It was, you know what? It was all of us because, we had Jesse Johnson, Terry and Jimmy, myself. We were all busting at the seams creatively and really wanting to do our own music or to have, some control over our music somehow. We were getting offers from, at one point, Evelyn Champagne King's people came and wanted me to produce a single on them. They offered me good money, but couldn't do it because he wasn't allowing it.
Right. And actually, Prince was producing everything under Jamie Starr.
Correct.
A fake name because I guess he didn't want people to know that he was doing everything.
I think he, more than anything, he wanted to create that mystery. So there'd be tidbits out there. Is Jamie Starr Prince? So he liked that mystery, So he wasn't really hiding behind it, but, it made it controversial.
Okay, so you drop your debut album, The Time, 1981. Then you guys go on tour, on the Controversy Tour. And the two bands kind of started to beef during this tour. How bad did it get?
It got bad. Prince was like, he wants to play jokes, and he wants to fuck around, and he wanted, and mess with you when you're on stage, but he'll tell you, don't do that when I'm on stage. So we're up here, doing our show, and all of a sudden eggs start flying by our heads, and hitting some of the guys and stuff. And he's over just laughing, having off stage, just laughing, having a good time. We're on stage, at an arena, with thousands of people kind of watching this unfold. So we get done, and a couple of guys were really pissed off. I was pissed because I was like, why are you going to mess with our show like that, man? So he said, yeah, but you guys can't do that to me when I'm on stage. And we're like, okay. So everybody suited up, Jimmy Jam had a big garbage bag over him taped on, and we had eggs. we started firing up, we started firing them up with the eggs and right in the middle of his show, and he got super pissed. So it just turned into a big, Jesse Johnson, they took him, handcuffed him to a coat rack in the dressing room. He tore the coat rack off the wall, came out trying to hit people in his band with it. It just turned into a big fight.
Yeah, sounds crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Okay, so I guess shortly after that time, Prince dropped 1999, which was like his biggest song at that point.
Yeah.
That was just a monster. A monster. When you heard 1999, what'd you think?
I knew what he was going for with it. I knew he wanted to be a pop star. He wanted a big pop record with a big fat pop hook, and when I heard it, I said, you did it. That's it.
Yeah. I remember when it was about to turn 2000, that song was played to death.
He had people wondering if we was going to make it out of here.
I know, right? So you guys go on tour with him again for the 1999 Triple Threat Tour.
Yeah.
And I guess the band was playing for Vanity 6
right
at the time. And Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis were starting to build themselves up as producers, and they started doing a bunch of different projects. They were doing the SOS Band, they were doing Climax, and there was a situation where they couldn't make it to a gig. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we. I mean, I knew Terry and Jimmy were moonlighting, and I was like, awesome, because I really wanted to do the same thing. So, but and they would have gotten away with it, you know. But this particular show we had in Atlanta, I think, or were they in Atlanta? Anyway, we had a show. They got snowed in somewhere. They missed the show, and that was pretty much the beginning of the end. We after that we retreated to I want to say Sunset Sound or Cherokee Sound, one of those studios right up the road here on Sunset. And Terry and Jimmy, Prince called them in for a meeting. We were cutting ice cream castles at the time, and Terry and Jimmy come in. I had no idea what he had in his mind. So me and Jesse Johnson and Prince sitting in the studio, and Terry and Jimmy come in, and he's, you guys are fired. Just like that. And, you know, I just kind of dropped my head and walked out of the studio, because I never wanted to be in one of those bands with the revolving door. I was kind of like loyal to my bands, and I always hated to see them switch members, whether it be a guitar player, lead singer, bass player. You know, I just kind of liked, you know, the bands. I get to know them the way I, get to know them, and I don't like to see that revolving door concept. So that's when I kind of realized that's where my band was heading, and I wasn't too happy about it.
Right, because Monte Moore also left the group right around that time.
Yeah.
And when you fast forward to Purple Rain, that's the current group. No Jimmy Jam, no Terry Lewis,
Exactly.
no Monte.
Right.
It was the new band at that point.
Yeah, the new guys.
Okay, which leads me into the next part. So then you guys start working on Ice Cream Castle. This is your third album?
Yeah.
And you guys have had some strong records, but no huge smashes yet. So you guys start working on Ice Cream Castle, and you put together Jungle Love. How did that song come together?
That song came together, a bass line submitted from Jesse Johnson really came up with the bass line, and Prince just took that ball and ran with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you first heard Jungle Love, did you know that was a hit?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and Jungle Love sounded like a hit to me. The Bird, I was on the fence with The Bird because we had a studio version of that song that was supposed to be on the album, and the studio version was just super funky and just clean, and it was hard hitting. And then Prince said, you know what? He said, we're going to do the song live. He said, you guys are going to record the song live, and we're going to use that version on the album. Which the live version, I mean, it was really cool. It was a brilliant idea, but I still was kind of hung up on wanting to put the studio version out. But it gave us bragging rights, because there's not too many bands in history who have hit records that they performed live, which was actual live recording.
Yeah, great record as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But Jungle Love was my shit. Just keep it 100 with you.
I hear you.
I love Jungle Love. Yeah. That's my favorite song that you guys put together.
Cool.
Point blank. And right around that time, that's when Purple Rain, the movie, was coming together. Right?
Yeah.
So I guess the whole movie, the way you described it in your book, was born and bred and shot in chaos.
Pretty much.
Explain that.
Well, first of all, we're just doing business as usual, recording songs and doing shows, and all of a sudden we're on a break, and Prince comes up and he's like, "We're going to do a movie." Okay. I'd never done a movie before, so he next thing you know, he's got us going to doing stupid shit in my book, like going to dance classes and going to acting lessons and all of this stuff, and it still didn't seem like it was going to be a reality necessarily, because we were just doing all this stuff. But then it started to come together. Then all of a sudden a director comes to town and the script shows up, and it's starting to look like we're really going to do this. And So to me, you know, people ask me, did I know? I'm like, that was one of the most honest or innocent efforts because we didn't, in my opinion, we didn't know what we were doing. We were just, you know, the director showed us the script. He sat me and Jerome down, and line for line, we went through the script, and he said, okay, this is what the script says. What would you guys say? And so we basically rewrote all of our parts, and next thing you know, we're shooting a movie.
And Apollonia played the love interest. Ooh, she was bad.
Yeah, she was she was a vanity replacement is what happened, you know, because all the way up until basically we shot the movie, it was supposed to be vanity. Her and Prince had a falling out at the last minute, and the next thing I know, here comes Apollonia out of nowhere. I'd never heard of her before, never seen her before, but just right prior to us shooting the movie, here she comes.
Very similar look too to
Very
to
similar.
Vanity.
I think he was going for the same thing there, you know.
Well, him and Vanity, were they dating?
Oh yeah.
He was hitting everything. Huh?
Yeah, you couldn't be in Prince's. You couldn't be in his movie or on his record without, you know. I mean.
Okay. Now you actually played the villain in Purple Rain. You were the one trying to get Apollonia, and you know, and you kind of had a beef with Prince throughout the film, and I guess that's actually based on the reality of you guys touring together.
As it turns out, yeah, we had an element of that, you know, because I'm competitive. Prince is a super competitive individual, so you know, we were always cool until, you know, we started touring, and once he realized that he had created this Frankenstein monster, we started kicking his ass on stage, and then, you know, that's when the tension came in. As far as in the movie and in real life really happened on stage. I mean, we weren't that competitive off stage, but as far as performing was, we were. So I think that the movie hits on that a little bit. But I had to live with, you know, everybody thought that was so real. So everybody, you know, especially a lot of girls come up, you're so mean to Prince in the movie. I'm like, it was a damn movie.
Well, the Jungle Love music video was actually from the movie.
Yeah.
Which was pretty dope. It was like you got to see the music video. Did it come out before the movie?
I think it came out, no, it came out during.
Right. Because I remember, you know, being in school at the time, and you're watching MTV and you watch the music video and you haven't seen the movie yet, but you're hyped up to see the movie because the music video is basically the movie.
Exactly.
You know, between the live performance and all the cut scenes, it's like you get to really see what the movie's about in that music video. And it was also a smash on top of that. And I guess the film cost $7 million to make.
See, I never knew that.
And it made $70 million at the box office.
Yeah, I just know that because shortly after the movie, we did what do you call them? We did I forget what you call them, but we did we shot some scenes in downtown LA because we were basically done with the movie and we just had some fill-in shots to do. So that was it for me. I got to LA, and you know, like I told you, my mom had me in Minneapolis for 20 years. I said, so this is it. I'm in LA, I'm staying. So I was basically out of the band. I was out of the camp, and on People magazine, I saw him, you know, it said that Prince made $17.5 million that year. You know, and that was partly off of Purple Rain, and you know, I told him about it because I made 50 grand and that was it. And I had to use that 50 grand to pay my band weekly. This dude was shrewd, but so I told him, I said, yeah, I see you made, you know, 17.5 mil last year. And he said, yeah, he said, that's a little bit of an understatement, but yeah.
Well, I mean, the story goes that Prince actually had to use his own money to underwrite the budget because the studio wasn't really feeling it initially, and he had to, you know, basically use his own money to get this thing going. Yeah. And the movie made $70 million at the box office and went on to do better, even after that. Now, what was interesting was that even though the songs Jungle Love and The Bird were in the movie, they were not on the soundtrack. And the soundtrack sold 25 million copies.
Again, he knew what he was doing. He's like, I'm not sharing the movie money with you. So he said, I'm going to take your songs from the movie and put them on your own record, and I will have the soundtrack out.
Were you pissed off about that?
I questioned it. I can't say I was pissed off, but I did question it. I was like, okay, because everything was so strategic with this dude. He just always thinking. So, I knew that it was somehow cutting me out of something.
Well, those songs ended up on Ice Cream Castles.
Yeah.
And that went double platinum.
Yeah.
So you couldn't be that mad.
Nah, I wasn't too mad about it,
So now you actually have hit songs under your belt. How did that feel?
I mean, it felt great. It was, what they say, it's nothing like, the first time, and so really that feeling when we had our first record and the single was Get It Up, I'm still working clubs in Minneapolis. I get a call from Prince, and he's like, and we still hadn't really put our band together yet. He's like, you better start putting your band together. He said, you have a hit record. And I was like, wow, but Minneapolis, you're in a bubble. There's no urban stations. We had, I think it was KMOJ. It broadcasts sun up to sundown and about a 3-block radius. It was an AM station. So, I didn't know. And so, I put the band together, and we're going out to do a showcase for Warner Brothers. And we got out of the airport. We rented a station wagon. The whole band's piled into this station wagon. And we're on the 405. And no sooner than we got on the 405, boom, Get It Up comes on the radio. And that feeling was incredible. We pulled over, and people looking at us like we're crazy. We dancing and stuff all up on the car. And that, that was amazing. I think by the time we got to The Bird and Jungle Love, it was exciting, but it wasn't as exciting as that first single. And plus, Jungle Love was on the radio so much, man. I think every station, I turned, I would hear it, and I turned to another station because maybe I didn't want to hear it. And guess what? It was on. It was just, the rotation was incredible.
Well, right around that time, and a lot of people don't realize this, but, Michael Jackson is always put on a pedestal. But around the Purple Rain time, Prince and Michael Jackson were kind of neck and neck.
Absolutely.
Because, Michael had Thriller.
Yeah.
Prince had Purple Rain. And he had the movie on top of that. So he was a movie star. And Purple Rain, the sales were up there with Thriller. And I guess the two of them had a rivalry.
They did. But, I think they kind of squashed it. I remember Prince told me that he went and met with Michael at some point, and I guess they talked about some stuff. I always thought that was an interesting comparison. I think that they were on the same level as artists, but I think Michael was straight entertainer. Well, Prince did it all. Prince was the entertainer, the writer, the producer, everything. So to me, I just thought that made his worth, and not to try and take anything from Michael, don't get me wrong, one of the greatest that ever walked the planet, but I just thought that Prince as a rounded, was the whole package.
Right. He was a musician, a songwriter.
He didn't need anybody to get him from A to B to Z. He could do it all himself.
Yeah, Michael needed Quincy Jones.
There you go. That's all I'm getting at.
Michael needed R. Kelly later.
He
needed producers.
Yeah, he needed people.
Songwriters.
Yeah.
But Prince played like 100 different instruments.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the two of them actually get into it? Because there was like this one video where they were like remember Hulk Hogan was there, and the two of them were kind of battling on stage a little bit.
Yeah. I never really was around. That was, like I said, I kind of. We loaded up and did what we did, and then I got out of there. So a lot of that stuff really came about later. And, Prince is one of them kind of cats where, I never had his phone number, not after I left Minneapolis. So I never knew how to call him, and he always contacted me at some obscure hour of the night. My phone rings, and I mean, I had, or I could count on one hand. I had some crazy cousins who called me in the middle of the night, but usually it'd be him. And he's got some kind of idea, something he wants to do. But no, I could never just pick up the phone and say, hey, what's up, or nothing like that. It had to be him calling.
Okay, so then in 1985, you guys actually split up. You walked away.
Yes, more like 84, but yeah. No, it's around 85, you're right. Yeah.
What was like the final straw?
The final straw for me was I got creative input. I did a lot with the early records. I always was in on the jam sessions and did the drum parts and played the drums on even a lot of his stuff. But I wanted to produce my own record and write for myself. And I asked him, and he had Steve Cavallo come up to my place in Santa Monica there, and we talked it through, and Steve's like, so because I had already threatened to leave, and Steve's like, so you're telling me you want to produce and write and be in charge of your own project? And I said, yeah, that's what I want. And he said, okay. He said, so I talked to Prince about this, and Prince said, that's fine. He said, as long as he can be the executive producer. And in my mind, I knew what that meant. That meant the same shit, different day. So I was like, okay, I get it. It's time for me to move on. So basically, that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Well, in your book, you said Prince needed to control everything and everyone around him, including religion. And he believed that the Jehovah's Witness way of living was the way to live. And that he would, Prince had this rant that you would call a sermon. And I guess the sermon came in two parts. He said Prince didn't like confusion. He enjoyed clarity and feeling secure even with religion. It wiped out confusion. He wanted everyone on that same accord. So was the religion kind of a breaking point?
Well, the religion came later. I was long gone. That had nothing to do with me leaving, but it did have to do with later on. He came and he's like, you come to our shows, and he always loved the shows, and and then after we did a show, inevitably a day or two later he would call. I got some songs. I want you to come out. I want you to do this. So I was living in Atlanta at the time, and he calls me. I fly out to Minneapolis. I'm ready to cut songs. I'm there to work. Well, I show up, and he's like, we're in the studio. He said, let's, go in my office, before we start recording. And so he's like, what's really going to help me do this and for us to work together again is, he said, us being brothers, we have to be on the same page. And he said, I can't do this unless I can bring you into the religion, unless we can pray together and have the same beliefs and all of this. And at that point, even though my arms are probably like this, but my arms are crossed, because I'm like, I'm not trying to do that. I've never understood Jehovah's Witness enough to, subscribe to it, And then after that, he had them like coming to my door in Atlanta like twice a week,
Oh, he would send Jehovah's Witnesses to your door.
To your door, because that's part of their thing. In order to be a Jehovah's Witness, you have to spread the word. So you got to go knocking door to door. And I guess he considered himself doing it through his musical circle. But he stopped the tape, and I said, I don't think I can do that. And he said, well, you go home and think about it. And he's like, you let me know. He said, once you, come to terms with it, if you do, we can cut. If not, I understand. And so I jetted back home, and that was that. I didn't see him for a few years after that.
Well, you felt that Prince was haunted by his dad. And I guess right like a few weeks after his dad had passed, he ended up bulldozing his dad's house.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Yeah, I don't know. I never, some things you just don't ask people, you know, and I never really, you know, had that on my brain, number one. And number two, even if it was, obviously it was a sensitive issue for him. So, you know, if he volunteered that information, I would have, you know, talked with him about it, but he never brought that up. And I heard about it, which I thought was interesting, but never talked to him about it.
Well, one of the most famous Prince moments actually came on the Chappelle Show, where they did the whole basketball game thing. And I actually interviewed Mickey Free from Shalimar, who was down with Prince during that time. And it was actually there at the basketball game.
Oh, damn.
And yeah, he said it went exactly like that. He actually said that Prince played like Michael Jordan.
We're in our street clothes, bro. Remember, we just came from the club.
Okay.
So we're in our street clothes. So Prince said, give me the ball back. And I swear to you guys listening, wherever you're going to be, Prince took the ball and it was like Michael Jordan after that. Shot after shot, like nothing but net. And I looked at Eddie and I was like, oh yeah. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And after we were done, true story, Prince's cook at the time, her name was Randy, cooked us pancakes. Blouses.
Was Prince really that good at basketball?
He was good, man. He was a good basketball player. Yeah, you know, little, agile, really quick, had decent jump shot, yeah.
Okay, so you leave Prince's camp and you started dropping solo albums. You did Daydreaming in 1987.
Yeah.
How did that do?
It did okay. The first one was Color of Success. And that one, you know, went platinum.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and Daydreaming, it might have got gold, you know, something like that, but.
Okay, I mean, solid numbers.
Yeah.
Solid numbers.
Yeah.
But you ended up actually coming back to Prince's camp and doing Pandemonium.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, here's what happened. Again, now this was before the religion thing, because the religion thing happened later on. But he wants me to come to Paisley Park, so we're going to cut a record. But first of all, me and Freeze, my bass player, Ricky Freeze, we write a lot together. We had submitted some songs to Prince to listen to, and he dug one of them. And so he took it, rewrote it, layered it, and called it Corporate World. And so we ended up, he wanted to do a whole record and call the project Corporate World. So we did that. So we finished the record. Jerome was on it, me and Prince again. So we finish, and then all of a sudden, the movie Graffiti Bridge comes into the picture. Now we're going to do another movie. This is halfway through the Corporate World album. And Jimmy and Terry decided they wanted to be involved. So we pretty much scratched the whole Corporate World album and started new with Jimmy and Terry, and that's how we went into Jerk Out and all of that stuff.
Right. And what's interesting about the Pandemonium album is that there's a song called Donald Trump, Black Version.
Yeah.
Which I was listening to on the way here. Very ironic.
It's a cool song, though, you know? But
in 2019, it gets lost in translation a little bit.
Right.
Well, I guess Donald Trump was just a baller back then. He was a rich guy, and that's how people were addressing him.
Yes.
He was the money man.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So you guys come back, and you do the Pandemonium album, and then Jerk Out was the big single off of that.
Yeah.
And you do the whole mirror thing in the music video once again. You originally did it in Jungle Love.
Yeah.
And then I guess it was Jerome.
Yeah.
Was holding the mirror.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah.
How did that thing even come together?
Well, that came together. The song "Cool," Somebody Bring Me a Mirror. We had already been on tour. We were back rehearsing again, revamping the show at this little rehearsal hall in South Minneapolis called the Yasm. I forget what that was, something backwards, I'm sure. But anyway, we're doing Cool, and I'm like, somebody bring me a mirror. And Jerome just, hopped up, ran into the bathroom, snatched the mirror off the wall, and then next thing I know, he's standing in front of me with the mirror. And all the guys were just kind of looking at each other like, this shit's pretty cool, man. So Jerome went from being, at that time, he was like valet. You know, he did all the luggage and all that stuff. So that was his introduction to the stage, man. He was in after that.
Well, around that time, Prince had just done the Batman soundtrack. And he was messing with Kim Basinger, who was like the hottest girl at the time. And I guess because the whole Batman thing, the Jerk Out video had some interesting cameos. Jack Nicholson was actually in the music video. Quincy Jones was in the video. You end up taking his girl.
Right, right.
Sugar Ray Leonard was in the video. It was pretty star-studded video there.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, Jerk Out was actually, even though it's not our most popular song, it was actually our highest charting song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the song you said, you ain't got to go, but you got to get the hell up out of here. Was that the first time that was said?
Well, first time on record.
Yeah. You know, because you keep hearing that over the years.
Yeah,
but you coined that phrase, I guess, on that record?
No, I didn't. You know, as a matter of fact, I'll tell you, we used to do clubs, and we used to do this club called the Riverside. And there's a MC, I forget his name, and he would say that at the end of the night. He's like, you know, after the bands were done playing, and he's wrapping it up, and he's like, you ain't got to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here. And, you know, it just came back. You know, that was one of them lines that we just, you know, we're going to use this at some point in time.
Yeah, and it worked for that record. Well, the time got back together, did the album, and then things fell apart again. The group broke up once again.
Well, the group, you know, the group never stood a chance at that point, because everybody, it used to be where we had some kind of leadership and some direction, but once we got back together to do that record, Jesse Johnson, he already, you know, had some solo success. Terry and Jimmy were off the charts. They were through the roof. So it went from having maybe a chief and a co-chief and then some Indians to having a room full of chiefs. Well, we couldn't get nothing done because everybody's opinion counted or, you know, took precedence over, you know, so it was just hard. We couldn't get nothing done.
You know, based on the book, things started to go kind of downhill for you after that. Your marriage wasn't going well?
Marriage wasn't going well. You know, I don't know, I was in a funk. You know, I couldn't think. And I think that it was my way of saying, I'm going to take a break. That, even though I didn't consider myself taking a break, I just looked up one day and I went from, you know, my house in the hills to sleeping on my sister's living room floor, and I couldn't figure it out. And I didn't really have the ambition to figure it out at the time. Now, there have been times in my life where I early on had a serious drug problem, and that I got past, got through it, kept going. But this thing wasn't drugs, alcohol, nothing like that. I just didn't have it. And so I looked up and I was on my sister's, sleeping on the floor. And one day I'm sitting up in her little dark studio apartment, didn't get much sunlight, and a buddy of mine, Ron Sweeney, called me and he's like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, why don't you put the band back together? And just like that, a light went off in my head, and you know, next thing I know, I got the guys back together. We put the show together and never looked back. You know, the phone's been ringing off the hook ever since.
Right, because I guess 9 years passed until you saw Prince again.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, and I guess you're supposed to open up for him, and it didn't work out.
Now, if you're talking about the Target Arena show, yeah, he had us fly to town. You know, good faith. I fly my band in. First of all, he's got us at this little rustic, like wood cabin hotel out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, I'm not staying here. So I went and got, you know, the nice little, you know, 5-star right across the street from the Target Center. I'm posted up, and it's about maybe an hour before the show, and we get a phone call. Prince changed his mind. He doesn't want you guys to open for you. him tonight. I'm like, okay. I'm like, so I said, okay, so I get that. I said, so can he give me some money just to reimburse me for my out of pocket? You know, I got my guys here. I pay them per diem. I pay their whatever. You know, if I bring them out, I pay them. And I said, and plus my airfare. I said, can I get? And they're like, Prince said no. So I said, okay, this is some bullshit. So anyway, he ended up giving me, we went the rounds, and he ended up giving me enough money to reimburse me for the airfare, and I got the guys home, and I said, you know what, that's it. You know, I said, no more calls, because he had done this several times and changed his mind. I said, no more calls. I said, I'm not leaving the house for this dude unless he pays me 100% up front.
Yeah, Prince has this interesting sort of, generous, cheap thing that kind of has went on the whole time. Because I remember I interviewed Curtis Blow at one point, and they were doing a music video as a tribute to Martin Luther King. And back then, music videos were expensive.
Yeah.
You couldn't just pick up a video camera,
Right.
an iPhone and shoot a music video.
Exactly.
And he said that they didn't know where they were going to get the money for the music video, and they went to Prince, and they needed like $50,000. Prince just wrote him a check without any credit or anything, and he was like, "Yo, man, thank you so much." And Prince was like, "Hey, man, it's Martin Luther King. Don't even mention it."
Yeah.
And he would like literally just throw off $50,000 like that. But
Yeah.
then when it comes to reimbursing your airfare,
Right. Like $17.5 million that year, I was like thinking, now I helped make that movie. I'm like, I wonder if you're going to write me a little check, but that never happened.
well, you guys continued to to play. You guys were in the Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back movie. And I guess you called yourself the original Seven at one point?
That was when we got together and decided as the time that we were going to do a record. Terry and Jimmy wanted to do a record. And of course, Prince said, no, you can't use the name. So we had to...
Wait, hold on. Prince really had a problem with you guys using the name that far later?
You know what? This dude was such a control freak that I thought that, because I renamed the group, it used to be The Time. When I started touring, I changed it to Morris Day and The Time. I said, wow, I've been doing this for years now. And I said, I haven't had any problems with Prince. I was like, the dude, he's finally coming around. He's not trying to squash me. But then I later found out that legally, I can't use The Time to record, but he can't stop me from using The Time as a touring name. So legally, there was nothing he could do. So I just wonder if he might have tried to shut me down because he wasn't letting us use that name for the record.
Were you around him when he changed his name to the symbol?
A couple times. I mean, I wasn't around, but I saw him a few times. And
Okay.
I told him, I said, I don't know what to call you.
What did he say?
He said, don't call me. He said, don't call me anything. Just don't call me Prince.
Yeah, I heard he had a problem with people actually calling him Prince at that time.
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys continued to tour, and you dropped a new album in 2011, Condensate.
Yeah.
How did that one do?
That record didn't do well at all. It was sort of doomed in its own way out of the box because we weren't able to use our signature name, The Time. So we had to be creative. The original Seven, you could look at it like the original 7 members, the original 7 letters, The Time. But it didn't catch on, partly because I don't think we had a good business plan. We tried to do everything internally. Terry Lewis is a very, very smart guy, but he also, kind of wants to do a lot. And so he was kind of being our music rep, and the liaison between us and the label and everything, which I think we really needed somebody to handle all of that for us and have a plan in place before the record came out. And we were just kind of handling things as they happened instead of having a solid plan in advance.
Well, leading up to 2016, Were you in contact with Prince at all?
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, this dude, he stayed in touch with me. Like I said, the most obscure moments of the day, the phone would ring and, or else he'd come to a show or else we'd go to his show. He called Jerome and I to do Coachella with him one year. We were, we did musicology with him. Coachella, we went on unannounced and did The Bird and Jungle Love. And so, through the years, he would keep in touch.
Were you guys still close or just a gig and then that's it?
No, it's funny because, how you can be apart from somebody and you be like, oh, he's fucked up, and then you see people and a lot of times that animosity just goes away and you're happy to see them. It was always that kind of thing where, we might not talk for a year or a few years or whatever, but it seemed like every time, we crossed each other's paths, it was genuine.
And he was sitting on a massive amount of music at the time. From what I understand, that he was just working himself to death up to his final day. Because even though he wasn't putting out albums, he kept making albums. He kept making songs just over and over and over again.
Yeah. Even when we were kids, he told me he had 100 songs in his, binder before he even got to his first single. So that was his thing, man, cutting, right? Music.
Yeah, and I remember one of the things that he said. Well, the story goes that because he was a Jehovah's Witness, he didn't want like a hologram of him after the fact after he passed because he felt that was demonic. You know anything about that?
No, well, we hologrammed him up in the book. That's what we conjured up his voice in the book, so that's how we did it. But no, I didn't. Like I said, I was, there was a time when we were kids and early on and the music's breaking and man, we talked about everything. But, once I was out of the camp, that was it. I was really out of the information loop. And so it just, the little bit of time that we spent creatively trying to do stuff, it just, it wasn't the same. So I didn't really hear a lot about, his beliefs and all that.
Yeah, quite a loss. Quite a loss. Yeah. What do you think was your greatest moment with Prince, if you look at all the years you guys spent together?
Greatest moment.
If you could just relive one moment with him right now.
Man, I would just say, probably that first record that we cut together. I mean, we laughed, we partied, we went out, we would go out, go to the club, go back, cut. It was just, and it was coming out magic. The songs were coming out magic, and it was to the point where, the house, we cut a lot of it in the house that he bulldozed, that his father lived in. Obviously, Prince lived there at the time, had his studio there, and it was on a lake. And so we, some nights, 2 o'clock in the morning, the cops are knocking. You guys got to stop. The music's, reflecting across the lake, and the neighbors are up. And so, just those times, man, we were living a. It was really enriched musically and friendship and all of that.
And there's so many artists that have come out over the decades, but it seems like Michael Jackson and Prince are the two that people really put on a pedestal above all others. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the numbers kind of speak to that. They touched, the world, with their music.
Yeah, even to this day.
Yeah.
And about a year later, at the Grammy Awards, you guys actually did a tribute to Prince with the original lineup.
Yeah.
And then Bruno Mars, I think, did something after that.
Yeah.
Was that bittersweet?
It was cool, man. I thought, I thought it was cool. I'm not going to say bittersweet. I enjoyed it. I found something out about Bruno. I didn't know he could play guitar like that.
Yeah. And then you guys just had a recent performance once again.
Yeah.
At the Soul Train Awards?
Yeah.
Everyone was talking about that.
It was awesome, man. It was awesome because it was nice just to be in the house to see Jimmy and Terry get honored, but it was also awesome because that band was incredible. So that was only the second time that I heard my songs played with a real horn section, and they were firing, man. I was loving it. It was like Christmas time for me. And one other time when we did Coachella, when Prince called us out to do Coachella, his band at the time had a horn section, and that was the other time that I've heard the song. So it was an incredible night.
Well, Morris Day is a hell of a story, a hell of a life. And by the way, you look great these days. You're still doing music.
Oh man, yeah.
Like I said, you got the new book out, and you killed it at the Soul Train Awards.
Appreciate
You
it,
haven't
man.
missed a step.
Appreciate it, man.
And I'm sorry for your loss with Prince. I know you guys had your ups and downs over the years, but I'm pretty sure you're glad that.
Well, it's the thing is we're all heading in that direction, so we'll party later.
This
You
is
can't
true.
get past that door, man.
This is true. We're all going to end up where Prince is
That's
right
right,
now
that's right.
at some point. Well, Morris, thank you again for coming in. I've been a big fan since I was a kid.
My man.
And you have some classic songs, classic movie scenes, and man, just looking forward to what you have ahead.
Appreciate that, man.
No doubt. Until
Yeah.
next time.
All right, my man.
Peace.